Jake needed a cheap place, fast. He found it in a rundown building downtown. The apartment was small with peeling paint and stained carpets, but it was affordable. One thing stood out: the vents. They were unusually large, dark squares gaping in the walls. They seemed to watch him, promising something sinister. The first night, Jake heard it, a scratching sound. It came from the vents. He dismissed it as rats, but the sound persisted, growing louder. It seemed deliberate, a slow, methodical scraping like claws on metal. Sleep became impossible. Whispers slithered from the vents. They were faint, just beyond comprehension. Sometimes he'd wake to the feeling of being watched. The air grew thick, heavy with the sound of breathing. His once empty apartment felt crowded. One morning, Jake woke up starving. He had bought groceries the night before, but when he opened the refrigerator, it was nearly empty. The carton of milk stood open on the counter. He lived alone. Fear turned his stomach. He hadn't imagined it. Something was in his apartment. Jake grabbed his flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness. He aimed it at the vent. Something moved within, pale and thin, a hand. He recoiled in horror, his heart hammering in his chest. The smell hit him then, a foul, metallic odor like old blood and rotting flesh. He contacted the landlord, his voice shaking. The landlord laughed, blaming his imagination. Desperate, Jake set up a camera. He pointed it at the vent, its red light blinking. He didn't sleep that night. He couldn't. Footsteps echoed from above, heavy, dragging footsteps, right above his apartment. The camera's memory card held the horrifying truth. A gaunt, pale face with eyes like black pits stared back at him. Long, sharp fingers gripped the edges of the vent, scratched at the metal. His blood ran cold. He had to get out now. Jake didn't pack. He didn't look back. He fled into the night, the screams of the damned echoing in his ears. Later, the news reported the discovery. The previous tenant, missing for months, found in the crawl space above Jake's apartment. His body was a mangled mess, covered in deep, bloody scratches. The man in the vents had claimed another victim.